going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. And last week, obviously, I went over the bludgeoning that took place on Super Bowl 59 between the Eagles and the Chiefs, as all of America witnessed literally the best thing ever, and that's watch the Chiefs get dismantled before our very eyes. That was probably the best Super Bowl to watch, even though it was a blowout, and a lot of people aren't too keen on blowout Super Bowls. Obviously, some that come to mind are Seattle and Denver from about 10 years ago, a 48-8 bludgeoning. But I think people were just so sick and tired of seeing Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, just the entire Chiefs organization just getting away with a lot of things, at least supposedly, that a lot of people think they were getting away with. But it was actually so beautiful to watch the Kansas City Chiefs get bludgeoned by the Eagles. That was nothing short of spectacular. And I think we can all collectively agree on that. So as you all know, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32, get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, football season is over. The NBA season is still in swing, but we also have the NFL draft coming up in about 2 months, a little over 2 months, and we're going to be talking about it all. We're going to be talking just the draft order in general, some of the rumors that are swirling around for free agency. I got a bone to pick with the NBA real quick to start off the show, but that's what we're going to be going over today. A lot of the trade rumors, a lot of the free agency moves that are rumored, and realistically, my thoughts on the NFL draft to come. So my first issue that we're going to talk about is the NBA All-Star Game. And I don't think many people are too keen on the All-Star Game anymore, and I don't think anybody thoroughly enjoyed that. Obviously, that different format that they introduced, the 4 teams, the 3 games, and the 1 championship, like tournament style, like this is honestly, this system wasn't even going to work in general. There's so much wrong with NBA All-Star Weekend in general. It's not necessarily just the All-Star Game. I remember for a long period of time that the dunk contest was an issue. Listen, we have all been spoiled by the 2016 dunk contest. Unfortunately, I do not believe that will ever be replicated ever again. When you had Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon going dunk for dunk, they literally had to extend the dunk contest time because Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon just kept going 50 dunk for 50 dunk. That was the best dunk contest in NBA history. Nobody can argue that, and I think that's why maybe a lot of these dunk contests are a little underwhelming, because nobody can realistically match the athleticism that those two did back in 2016. Again, by far the best dunk contest ever. I mean, the highlight of this entire All-Star weekend was Mac McClung, who's actually an amazing dunker. Like, I have never heard of the name Mac McClung other than the past 3 years when he's won back-to-back-to-back dunk contests. And I think one of the main problems that you have with All-Star Weekend, obviously, I've talked about it before, is that NBA players, they just don't try. It's so obvious when players are trying, but it's so obvious that, the fans hate this, and yet the NBA players are going to continue to do it. I never even really liked this 4-team, format. Obviously, they played. I didn't necessarily think they played that hard. And then, obviously, you had LeBron James sitting out. You had Anthony Edwards sitting out. Why have the biggest players in one of the biggest leagues in the world, one of the most worldly renowned leagues, and this is the product you put out there? I don't think Adam Silver is a good commissioner. And I don't think that the NBA All-Star Weekend would have so many issues if David Stern was still here. God rest his soul. But just looking overall, the skills challenge, you had Wemby and Chris Paul trying to cheat. There's no enjoyment out of it. the highlight of the weekend was the dunk contest, surprisingly, and it was realistically only Mac McClung. And this is just a big issue. Why? I've seen like NBA clips. I've seen, the clips posted on the NBA IG channel or even on ESPN. I see players that practice harder than they play in All-Star weekend. Now, a lot of people would say, well, what's the incentive? Well, I mean, you're supposed to be an all-star. It's supposed to be the collection of the best athletes in the NBA going at it. Like, why? How is that not an incentive enough to play? Like, hard at least. The hardest I've ever seen NBA players play in the All-Star game was back in 2020 when Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, passed away, and they honored Kobe Bryant in the fourth quarter of the All-Star game where it was a set score to reach, but every player played as hard as they possibly could have played in that game. That 2020 All-Star game in remembrance of Kobe Bryant was absolutely fantastic. But as far as like the here and now when it comes to All-Star weekend, I don't necessarily know if you can fix it just because it's entirely based on the players. Like, it's up to them whether they want to play hard or if they want to play at all. And shout out to Mac McClung in general because he showed up. He just loves to dunk. I mean, I believe he tweeted that or he posted that recently, but he just loves to dunk. And he's a phenomenal one. I think if you put Mac McClung, Zach LaVine, and Aaron Gordon in a dunk contest, I think that would be absolute cinema. But that's the first bone I just had to pick with the NBA. All-Star Weekend, I haven't watched All-Star Weekend really. I tune in to check it out, but I immediately check back out because it's not worth it. When all the players are taking it easy and not really trying hard, it's just not a good product being put on the field. So that's really my bone to pick with the NBA. I don't mind the NBA. I haven't watched as much as I'd like to in the years past. I've just grown, numb to it, I guess. I'm not really the biggest fan of the NBA anymore. But I still check in every now and then, and especially once the playoffs start, I'll definitely be covering more of that. But when you look at All-Star Weekend in general, it's just a bunch of nonsense. The skill position, and you also had Damian Lillard lose to a fan in the stands in the three-point contest. Like, what? The All-Star Weekend needs fixed. I don't necessarily know if you can possibly fix it because of how just atrocious it is, and it's completely up to the players. It's completely left up to them and their discretion whether they want to play or not. All right, now let's go over... I want to go over some trade rumors that I heard recently. So, let's go over something I heard recently about the New York Giants. So, when you take a look at the New York Giants, they're awful. They're the worst team in the NFC East, and that's not it's saying much because you got Philly who just won the Super Bowl. You have Jaden Daniels in Washington who are turning heads and immediately a threat to win it all in the NFC. They're still a couple years away, maybe even just a year away. You got the Dallas Cowboys who, let's be real, are garbage. But then you have the Giants who are even bigger dumpster fire. So I heard an interesting rumor the other day that and I'll talk about the quarterbacks in this draft. A lot of people don't like the quarterback draft, and I necessarily don't either, but I think it's very underrated compared to what people are actually saying about it because I've watched all these quarterbacks from their time in college. But I heard rumors that the New York Giants are going to look to trade that third overall pick. And I heard the rumor that it would be to the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I don't know necessarily if the Rams would keep the third overall pick and draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders because this whole entire notion that the Giants would trade the third overall pick to the Rams is to get Matthew Stafford. Now, I think that would be an instant hit for New York. They have been desperate for a quarterback for years, especially since Eli Manning retired, and Eli wasn't necessarily the greatest quarterback on the backstretch of his career When you look at the Giants, they are in such desperate need of a quarterback that's an adult that can literally do any sense of throwing the football. The Giants need a quarterback badly. They got good skill position players. They got a decent defense. They just have no quarterback whatsoever. Obviously, they traded Daniel Jones last year to the Minnesota Vikings. They traded him, and they just ran the table of terrible football and terrible quarterback play to finish out the year. So this makes sense for New York if you don't like any of the rookie quarterbacks in this draft. Now, obviously, the top two quarterbacks in this draft are Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I've already talked an immense amount about both of them over the past year, I would say. But looking at the Giants, if you don't like the quarterback draft, why not go get a proven commodity like Matthew Stafford? I still think Matthew Stafford's a top 10 quarterback in this league. And also there are rumors that LA does not want to renegotiate his contract and give him a longer-term extension. And I'll be honest, I kind of support that from the Rams' perspective because he's getting older. He's still good, but for the amount of money that he would be making, I don't think that's a wise investment for the future for the Rams. The Rams have been hitting on draft picks like crazy. That defense of theirs is young and only going to get better. You have the defensive rookie of the year in Jared Verse. You have another rookie at safety, Cameron Kitchens from Miami, that's an absolute stud, and he's only going to get better. And just the Rams as a whole, I believe they're just looking to shop Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. I think they would give up Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, maybe a first rounder and a second, probably for the Giants for Matthew Stafford. The Giants would give up the third overall pick for that. Now, let's say hypothetically that does happen. So if you're the Giants, you have Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. You have Cooper Kupp. Even though he's older, you still have Cooper Kupp. You have Matthew Stafford now, an okay offensive line, an okay run game, and a decent defense. I think you're instant contenders for second in the NFC East. Obviously, I don't think anybody's on the Eagles' level. Now, what does that say for LA with the third overall pick? Well, if McVay and the GM like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, obviously, there you go. Then you have your quarterback of the future. You spend the rest of your draft picks on skill position players and offensive linemen. But if not, you use that pick to trade down in the draft. I can think of a decent amount of teams that are looking for quarterbacks in this draft. And looking at it, it's looked at as a weak quarterback draft. But going forward, obviously, there are going to be teams that always reach. I mean, we had the Browns take Johnny Manziel. I mean, that's self-explanatory enough. And we had the Giants years ago take Daniel Jones. So, we've seen some stuff happen in the draft. We saw the Cardinals take Josh Rosen at number 10 a couple years ago, or number 11. Yeah, that turned out real well. So looking at it from the LA perspective, if they don't like any of these quarterbacks, I guarantee you there's some teams that are willing to give up draft capital to the Rams for that third overall pick. So if I'm the Rams, obviously I get out of the Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp contract. I get rid of them because they're older and more expensive. Still good players, but older and more expensive. You instantly get younger. You trade back in the draft, and you just draft accordingly. Maybe it's Jackson Dart in the second round, or maybe you kind of tank for a year, but not necessarily really. You stock up on draft picks because the following year is an actual great quarterback draft. And I believe it'll be Arch Manning coming out, and he'll be probably the perennial number one overall pick, if we're being honest. But that's one rumor I heard. I think it's very interesting. It wouldn't honestly shock me because there's a lot of plans that are not revealed yet by a lot of NFL teams, and I think this is going to be probably the most intriguing draft in recent memory, and I can't wait in the next couple weeks. I believe next week is when I move into my own studio, so I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. So in the next couple weeks, I'll be doing my own mock draft. I'm going to be doing that. I'll show you all the results, and We'll go over it, and I'll give all my reasonings for it. So that's the first rumor I wanted to talk about. Second one, Aaron Rodgers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, well, this is an interesting one. Aaron Rodgers, I looked at statistically, he was actually not a bad quarterback at the back half of the NFL season, on the back stretch of the NFL season. He wasn't a bad quarterback. But if I'm Pittsburgh, I don't know if I can bring in Aaron Rodgers. We tried an older vet quarterback, and it didn't work. Russell Wilson, as much as people want to say it kind of worked, it didn't work. We went 10-7, another winning season, and a first-round exit in the playoffs to a good quarterback-led team in Lamar Jackson. Pittsburgh does not have that, and still does not have a quarterback of note on roster that can compete with those other guys. You know, in the AFC North alone, obviously Deshaun Watson's garbage, so throw him out of the mix. But Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, they're not on the level of Joe Burrow, especially Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was just runner-up for MVP. Joe Burrow led the league in passing yards, passing touchdowns, passing efficiency, passing everything, and they missed the playoffs. That's criminal. We have to talk about a little bit about Joe Burrow. But if I'm Pittsburgh, why would I bring in another vet as another experiment? Why would you not try and run it with Justin Fields? What I see Pittsburgh, there's two options in Pittsburgh. Obviously, you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and you spend all your draft capital that you have this year on skill position players and offensive linemen, and maybe bolster some of the defense of line and defensive backs. But you cross your fingers that Aaron Rodgers will actually play good, almost like Russell Wilson, almost like what we had to do with Russ. Or you run it with Fields and do the same thing with your draft picks. Surround them with better talent and more talent, and build that defense back up and just see what you have out of Justin Fields. But there's a third option. Trade away valuable assets and picks for one of the top 3 picks to try and get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and spend the rest of your draft capital in the draft on skill position players, offensive linemen, and just overall surrounding that rookie quarterback, whether that be Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, with as much talent as possible. I don't necessarily think that option's going to happen, but I wouldn't mind it because I've seen everything I wanted to see out of Justin Fields. He did good. He did not do great. I was there at the Pittsburgh and Dallas game. A lot of those issues that Pittsburgh was having on offense was Justin Fields, was him missing throws, was him with his accuracy issues. So I don't know necessarily if I would want to run it back with Justin Fields. If I'm Pittsburgh, here's what I would want to do. I want to get younger at quarterback and more talented at quarterback. People are going to say that I'm a homer for Cam Ward, which, sure, I guess you can say that, but I've watched the games. I watch college football. I understand these quarterbacks. I know the upside of these quarterbacks. Everything Cam Ward did this year, I haven't seen anything he did that was different from what Caleb Williams would usually do in USC. Everybody thinks Caleb Williams is the second coming of Andrew Luck. And everybody compares it to Andrew Luck. I feel bad that he had to retire early, but you get what I'm saying when I say that Cam Ward, people said he has a turnover problem. Well, he only turned the ball over 7 times in the entire year. Plenty of other quarterbacks had turnover problems then. His turnovers were in the single digits. What are you talking about? I watched all those games. The only quarterback I would not be willing to take a chance on, honestly, is Jalen Milroe. I think Shedeur Sanders, he's hit and miss for me. He's a really, really interesting prospect. They have him graded as the number 1 overall quarterback in this draft. I just don't see it. I don't know how you can look at Shedeur compared to Cam Ward. Cam Ward has the arm strength, the arm angles, the accuracy. People praise the Shedeur Sanders for his accuracy, but Cam Ward is, he's not far off from that. And Cam Ward has more, I'd say more upside to him, because when you're getting drafted in the top 10, more than likely you're going to a terrible organization with a terrible offensive line, and the coaches are on the hot seat. So when you look at it, Cam Ward's scrambling ability and ability to extend plays outside the pocket and just throw absolutely beautiful footballs, I honestly think that Cam Ward would be the number one overall pick, like number one quarterback taken off the board in most drafts, in most mock drafts this year. I understand that a lot of people, like a lot of NFL GMs, are not liking it, but I still think that it's quite possible to get a good quality quarterback in this draft. Some of them of note, you got Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, obviously. And then everybody says it's a significant drop-off. I don't necessarily believe it's significant, but I still think it is a drop-off. Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel, Tyler Shuck, Riley Leonard, Curtis Rourke, and Seth Hennigan. So those are some of note. Obviously, there will probably be more in the coming weeks. But when you look at this, Shedeur and Cam, sure, I think they're the top tier quarterbacks. Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, and Kyle McCord and Will Howard, I think, are on another level. And then below that, I would put Dylan Gabriel and Jalen Milroe. I honestly don't like Jalen Milroe as a quarterback. I watched him during the Senior Bowl practices. This dude couldn't hit his throws whatsoever. So, if I'm Pittsburgh, if I'm the Steelers, I would want Cam Ward just because I want to get younger at the quarterback position. Justin Fields, I know he's still young, but I've seen everything out of him. I think we've seen his peak. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback necessarily. He could be. I guess we do need to see more out of him. But me personally, I'd say this is what Pittsburgh should do. But that's more than likely what they're going to do, is run it back with Justin Fields and possibly the Aaron Rodgers situation before they trade up in the NFL draft. They only did that one time in the past 15 years, and it was for Devin Bush. And ever since he got injured, he was no good anymore. That injury ruined his career. But going forward, I think Pittsburgh, they're more than likely going to run it with Aaron Rodgers or Justin Fields rather than trade up in the draft, because trading up in the draft just is not in their nature. All right, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the first 10 picks. Maybe just a little bit in the first round. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. Actually, before we do that, I do have to talk about something that Dak Prescott said recently. I'm not going to hammer him too hard for this because everybody else has been. But I heard Dak Prescott say that they're not far off from competing with Philadelphia. I get it. Your NFC East rivals, that's your biggest rival in the NFL. Y'all didn't make the playoffs. Jaden Daniels and Washington made their first conference championship in over 20 years. I believe it was over 20 years. And then the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Giants are a tire fire. We know that. But Dak Prescott is going in year 10, I believe, this year. He has 2 playoff wins, has never been to the NFC Championship game. Jaden Daniels, in his first year as Washington's quarterback, has 2 playoff wins and a conference championship appearance. That is already way better than what Dak Prescott has done in his career. And it's not close. There are two players on Dallas that would realistically start for the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe only one, and that's Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb more so, because I think he's a top 3 receiver in this league. I love A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but I think CeeDee Lamb is definitely better than both of them. And Micah Parsons, Well, I don't know. After watching how the Eagles' front seven played in the Super Bowl, I don't necessarily believe that Micah Parsons would probably start on that team. He'd be a great role player on that team. When you look at the Eagles' defensive line, it's just so unbelievably stacked. But that's a bone I have to pick with Dak Prescott. Like, I get you're hyping up your team. You're the leader of that team. You're supposed to inspire confidence in your team. You witnessed Jaden Daniels, a rookie, go into Washington and do something we have never seen before. This rookie quarterback has as many playoff wins as you do now and more NFC Championship appearances than you, and this was his first year in the league. You've been in the league 10 years. That's pitiful. And for the amount of money Dak Prescott is making, it's absolutely atrocious. It's sad, really. All right, so now we're going to finish off the show. I'm going to go over a little bit about position by position when it comes to the NFL draft. Not necessarily in-depth analysis, but people are, and I'm mainly talking about the quarterbacks in this situation. It's a very underwhelming draft, I guess, to the standard that was set last year. You got Bo Nix as a rookie making the playoffs. You had Jaden Daniels as a rookie making the playoffs and getting to the NFC Championship game. Caleb Williams obviously had his issues with Chicago, but I attribute all of those issues partially on Caleb, but a lot of them on the Bears organization in general. That has been a tire fire for decades, and hopefully Ben Johnson can steer them in the right direction. And he's basically a quarterback whisperer, so I guess we'll figure that out soon enough. But realistically, let's talk about these quarterbacks in this draft. Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. I've talked about them plenty. Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel, Riley Leonard, Tyler Shuck, Curtis Rourke. So I watched all these guys in college for the better part of 2 years. 3 years. Cam Ward and Shedeur mainly 2 years. I watched a little bit of Cam Ward when he was at Washington State, just based off whenever Pac-12 After Dark was happening. I would always log on to watch a game like that. Pac-12 After Dark, I miss those days. But Shedeur and Cam, I think, are obviously your two surefire candidates for the first two quarterbacks taken off the board. And everybody says afterwards it's a significant drop-off. I can kind of see where they're coming from, but I still like Jackson Dart as a talent. I like Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel, and Tyler Shuck, and Riley Leonard and Curtis Rourke for that matter. So if I had to grade all these quarterbacks, like, where I think they would fall in the NFL draft, Shedeur and Cam would be first round quarterbacks in my opinion. If he wasn't as turnover prone, I would say Jackson Dart would be a first round caliber quarterback. I don't think necessarily that Jackson Dart's a bad quarterback. I think he's a really good quarterback. Unfortunately, he was stuck in the SEC. Quinn Ewers I like, but he does have injury history and turnover problems. Jalen Milroe, that's my biggest issue in this draft. He's the biggest issue I have. When you look at him, the size is concerning. Not really the entirety of his size. Like, he's 6'2", 225, but apparently he's got small hands and doesn't understand really the throws he has to make, and his accuracy is kind of shoddy and, kind of spotty. So I don't really know what to make of Jalen Milroe. I believe a team's going to definitely take a chance on him. Milroe has already stated that he will not be switching positions, so I don't know how well that's going to turn out. I really don't. I don't see much upside with Jalen Milroe. I think he would have needed to come back one more year to Alabama to boost his draft stock. I don't get it. Oh, you also had Florida State's DJ Uiagalelei go into the NFL draft this past year. I don't understand that move whatsoever. That dude needs more time in college as he can possibly muster together. three quarterbacks I would say that are underrated, and I would not mind seeing them on my Pittsburgh Steelers. These three quarterbacks, obviously, they got issues to them. They're not maybe as talented as Cam Ward, Shadur, Jackson Dart, but these three quarterbacks I think can get it done at the NFL level. That's Kyle McCord, Will Howard, and Riley Leonard. I don't know what it is, but Kyle McCord reminds me a lot of Kirk Cousins, but a younger version. I don't know. Will Howard, I seen the way he played at Ohio State the backstretch of the year. Yeah, they lost to Michigan, but they steamrolled Tennessee, they steamrolled Oregon, and they took on Notre Dame and won the national title. And the way Will Howard played was nothing short of remarkable. I knew that they were able to win a national championship with Will Howard. I called it because he had such an amazing supporting cast around him. But at the same time, he literally went off in the playoffs. He played out of his mind. I wouldn't mind having Will Howard on my team. Riley Leonard, too. Not really polished as a passer, but he is solid. He's a solid runner, a big kid, a solid runner. I think he can definitely turn some heads in an NFL uniform. I don't know. I think those are three guys to really watch in this draft. Kyle McCord, Will Howard, and Riley Leonard. I think wherever they fall, that can be an interesting dynamic. I can definitely see them being starters in the NFL. Franchise guys, I don't know. But this quarterback draft is looked at as one of the weaker ones. I get why. But again, we'll have to wait and see what this rookie class ends up achieving. Obviously, the bar was already set pretty high from last year, so we'll end up seeing how it goes. But in the coming weeks, I'll make my own mock draft. I'll go over the entire first round. That's what I plan on doing. So here's the draft order, so everybody's just aware of it for the weeks to come. You got Tennessee at 1, Cleveland at 2, the Giants at 3, Patriots at 4, Jaguars at 5, Raiders at 6, Jets at 7, Panthers at 8, Saints at 9, Chicago at 10. So we're going to find out real soon. Obviously, the combine starts soon. So I'll discuss a little bit after that, and I'll go over my player ratings after that. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind.